As you hold the pistol in your hand, it seems to carry a weight more than merely that of its physical mass. It carries a sense of gravitas surrounding its deeper purpose. It's a finely crafted item, intricate runic markings engraved along the side of the slide, and on the ivory panels of the grip are carved the symbol of the sword driven into the fires below. Hello and welcome to the Crimson Weasel. Come in, pull up a seat and grab a drink. In this video I want to explore some of the processes of creating an artifact within the world of Candela Obscura. And I'm going to look at everything from sort of conceptualizing the idea in the first place through to sort of figuring out how we can then make that fit into both the narrative world and the game mechanics of Candela. Before I start, this video may have some slight spoilers for the story arc of the Circle of the Feather and Blade. So if you are a Feather and Blade player, please stop watching now. During their second assignment, one of the players decided to take a weapon from a fallen member of the Ascendancy being the primary religion within the game world. These Ascendancy agents as well were described as being kind of badass, and I think the player was hoping that some of that badassery may rub off on them by taking and using the weapon themselves. What I'm really wanting to get from this artifact is firstly to give a boost to the player's control roll when it comes to attacking with this weapon, in order to give them a bit of an advantage within the game. Secondly though, I also want to use this artifact as a bit of a way to drive some of the narrative, perhaps use it as a focus for the player's character arc. So as with most things when it comes to TTRPGs, I'm going to start by diving into the books. And I'm going to do a bit of research. I'm going to delve into the core rulebook first and see if there are any sort of pre-existing artifacts that I can base this one on. Not only will this potentially save me a lot of time, it'll also give me an idea on some of the mechanics that have already been implemented, have already been balanced and playtested by the game's creators. I'm also going to look up some of the lore for any entities or organizations that may be linked with the artifact. In this case, Pyre and the Ascendancy. This will help when it comes to creating some of the description and the logic of the artifact, making it feel like it's actually part of the world and something that might reasonably exist. Straight away, looking here at page 191 of the core rulebook, there is already something catching my eye. There's an artifact called Ellington's Rifle. When rolling control to shoot this gun, you may take a bleed mark to get 2 additional dice. Now that's pretty awesome. It definitely fits with the idea of boosting the control roll when using the artifact, in this case at the expense of choosing to take a bleed mark. And this brings up a really interesting point. If you are giving your players a bonus, it's sometimes worth considering throwing a bit of jeopardy in there, either through having to voluntarily sacrifice something, like they do in this case, or perhaps by there being some risk involved, a bit of chance, which I think is what I'm going to go for. My main reason for wanting to go with the idea of risk or chance rather than a guarantee of injury is that I know the player seems quite keen to make this a big part of their character, and I want them to be able to use this regularly. If they take a mark every time, it's going to take a toll quite quickly. So I'm going to give them a bonus to control, and I'm thinking of adding 1 additional dice to the roll. Now that doesn't sound like much, but considering it effectively gives the player the equivalent of spending an extra drive completely free on each roll, I think that's pretty good. Especially towards the end of assignments when, maybe you're starting to run a little low on resources. That extra dice can make a big difference. Now for the jeopardy. I think the risk of taking a bleed fits. The idea that Pyre may have imbued this weapon with some form of magic that could backfire works quite well with the lore, and also provides a suitable threat that will hopefully encourage the player to be somewhat cautious about its use. So we're going to give the player an additional dice, but at the risk of taking bleed. And I'm going to use the percentage chance of taking bleed as the mechanic to sort of balance the artifact. If you're thinking of simply dropping this artifact straight into your game, I think a good option would simply be that if the overall control roll is a failure, so a roll of a 1 to 3 on the highest dice, you simply take an additional bleed on top of what the consequences would otherwise have been. I feel this is, a pretty quick and easy way to integrate the artifact without there being any real changes to the role mechanics, so it keeps it nice and easy for both the GM and the players. That said, I want to integrate this artifact a bit more into the player's character arc, so what I'm thinking is that initially, when making a control roll, you have the option to take the additional dice. But if that additional dice is a 1 to 3 fail, you take that extra bleed. This basically ups the chance of bleed to 50%, which is pretty severe. The idea being that if the player decides to work alongside the Ascendancy contact, they could receive some training. They will then be able to use the rules that I mentioned before, where they only take this bleed if the roll in its entirety is a fail. Then, on top of that, if they decide to go all in and also become a member of the Pyre, they'll gain the additional advantage that a full success on the control roll will allow the wielder to soak their next bleed mark. But I'm going to make that non-stacking just so it doesn't become too effective. Now, with all the tricky technical stuff out of the way, the last bit to do is the creative stuff and to build up a description and decide on the final name for the artifact. Having had a read through a lot of the Ascendancy and Pyre lore, I've settled on calling this Deliverance. That word kind of having the dual meaning of both the action of being set free and also in describing a formal or authoritative utterance, both of which I think really fit with how Pyre would view such a divine weapon. So let me know what you think. Is there anything you would change or adapt, or are you planning to perhaps integrate this or something similar into your game? I'll drop the details into the description below. I hope you did find this video useful. If you did, please do like and subscribe and drop a comment. It really helps me to grow the channel. Thank you.